we'll be reading White Nights by Fyodor Dostoevsky. And this means it is a perfect time to sit back and relax and fall asleep to some reading. I have to ensure on my end that all of our sources are working and the puzzle is available. Yep, all is working. Sweet. Welcome, my sweet little fishies. I hope you are well rested, well watered, and snuggled up for some story time. White Nights, Fyodor Dostoevsky. First night. It was a wonderful night, such a night as is only possible when we are young, dear reader. The sky was so starry, so bright that, looking at it, one could not help asking oneself whether ill-humored or capricious people could live under such a sky. That is a youthful question too, dear reader, very youthful, but may the Lord put it more frequently into your heart. Speaking of capricious and ill-humored people, I cannot help recalling my moral condition all day. From early morning, I had been oppressed by a strange despondency. It suddenly seemed to me that I was lonely, that every one was forsaking me and going away from me. Of course, anyone is entitled to ask who every one was. For though I had been living almost 8 years in Petersburg, I had hardly an acquaintance. But what did I want with acquaintances? I was acquainted with all Petersburg as it was. That was why I felt as though they were all deserting me when all Petersburg packed up and went to its summer villa. I felt afraid of being left alone, and for 3 days I wandered about the town in profound dejection, not knowing what to do with myself. Whether I walked in the Nevsky, went to the gardens, or sauntered on the embankment, there was not one face of those I had been accustomed to meet at the same time and place all year. They, of course, do not know me, but I know them. I know them intimately. I have almost made a study of their faces, and am delighted when they are gay, and downcast when they are under a cloud. I have almost struck up a friendship with one old man whom I meet every blessed day, at the same hour in Fontanka. Such a grave, pensive countenance. He is always whispering to himself and brandishing his left arm, while in his right hand he holds a long, gnarled stick with a gold knob. He even notices me and takes a warm interest in me. If I happened not to be at a certain time in the same spot in Fontanka, I am certain he feels disappointed. That is how it is that we almost bow to each other, especially when we are both in good humor. The other day, when we had not seen each other for 2 days and met on the third, we were actually touching our hats, but, realizing in time, dropped our hands and passed each other with a look of interest. I know the houses too. As I walk along, they seem to run forward in the streets to look out at me from every window, and almost to say, "Good morning, how do you do? I am quite well, thank God, and I am to have a new story in May." Or, "How are you? I am being redecorated tomorrow." Or, "I was almost burnt down and had such a fright," and so on. I have my favorites among them. Some are dear friends. Some of them intends to be treated by the architect this summer. I shall go every day on purpose to see that the operation is not a failure. God forbid. But I shall never forget an incident with a very pretty little house of a light pink color. Hello. What are we reading today? We are reading White Nights by Fyodor Dostoevsky. Anxiety day 2 without internet? You will survive. You will get to the end of this. I believe in you. But do they know the Muffin Man? That is an excellent question, Rafe. I'm fairly certain they do not know the Muffin Man. Hello, Aaron. Let me do one special little thing, because I like this. I like adding a little bit of glow. I feel like it's very pretty. That. Oh, right, I forgot. We also had this turned on. I can set it to a different... Thank you for the kisses. I love kisses. It's frosty morning. Night. Night is too dark. Nightfall is also too dark in my opinion. And then there's underwater. Does this one fit? Should we do underwater? Light. We are reading White Nights, a short story. There we go. I think it looks pretty. Ignore the fact that my foot is phased through the ground. I could probably fix that actually. Let me grab this. I needed a drink of water to pause from the book anyway. So do pardon me as I take a pause. Oh, there we go. That fixed it. Now you guys get my feet on camera. Well, if you're in the horizontal view, you can see my feet. Wouldn't it be best to write what you are reading across the screen? You mean show what I'm reading? Possibly. If some people find that helpful, I can certainly show. Now, I don't think that on TikTok you'll be able to see this, but no. If you're watching on TikTok and you turn your phone horizontally, you'll be able to see the window. This one, I want to show White Nights. See, this is what I am reading. You can't read it. I do promise you that. Unless I have it at like this big. I don't feel like you're really going to be able to read it. But anyway, it's neither here nor there. We'll go ahead and we'll keep reading. Saturated, teal contrasted. And then what happens if I turn the light off? Oh, right. Yeah, that. Ooh, my stomach is loud. I like having a little bit of a glow effect. I feel like it looks really pretty. I will continue reading. I got distracted. This is also as large as I can make the text, so. I have my favorites among them. Some are dear friends. One of them intends to be treated by the architect this summer. I shall go every day on purpose to see that the operation is not a failure. God forbid. But I shall never forget an incident with a very pretty little house of a light pink color. It was such a charming little brick house. It looked so hospitably to me, and so proudly at its ungainly neighbors, that my heart rejoiced whenever I happened to pass it. Suddenly, last week, I walked along the street, and when I looked at my friend, I heard a plaintive, "They are painting me yellow." The villains, the barbarians. They had spared nothing, neither columns nor cornices, and my poor little friend was as yellow as a canary. It almost made me bilious, and to this day I have not had the courage to visit my poor disfigured friend, painted the color of the celestial empire. So now you understand, reader, in what sense I am acquainted with all Petersburg. Have I mentioned already that I had felt worried for 3 whole days before I guessed the cause of my uneasiness? And I felt ill at ease in the street. This one had gone, and that one had gone, and what had become of the other? And at home I did not feel like myself either. For 2 evenings I was puzzling my brains to think what was amiss in my corner, why I felt so uncomfortable in it. And in perplexity I scanned my grimy walls. I scanned my grimy green walls, my ceiling covered with spider's web, the growth of which Matrona had so successfully encouraged. I looked over all my furniture, examined every chair, wondering whether the trouble lay there. For if one chair is not standing in the same position as it stood the day before, I am not myself. I looked at the window, but it was all in vain. I was not a bit the better for it. I even bethought me to send for Matrona, and was giving her some fatherly admonitions in regard to the spider's web and sluttishness in general, but she simply stared at me in amazement and went away without saying a word, so that the spider's web is comfortably hanging in its place to this day. I only at last this morning realized what was wrong. Why they are giving me the slip and making off to their summer villas. Forgive the triviality of the expression, but I am in no mood for fine language, for everything that had been in Petersburg had gone, or was going away for the holidays. For every respectable gentleman of dignified appearance who took a cab was at once transformed, in my eyes, into a respectable head of a household who, after his daily duties were over, was making his way to the bosom of his family, to the summer villa. For all the passers-by had now quite a peculiar air, which seemed to say to every one they met, "We are only here for a moment, gentlemen, and in another 2 hours we shall be going off to the summer villa." If a window opened after delicate fingers, white as snow, had tapped upon the pane, and the head of a pretty girl was thrust out, calling to a street seller with pots of flowers, at once on the spot I fancied that those flowers were being brought not simply in order to enjoy the flowers and the spring in stuffy town lodgings, but because they would all be very soon moving into the country and could take the flowers with them. What is more, I made such progress in my new peculiar sort of investigation that I could distinguish correctly from the mere air of each in what summer villa he was living. The inhabitants of Kameny and Aptekarsky Island, or of the Peterhof Road, were marked by the studied elegance of their manner, their fashionable summer suits, and the fine carriages in which they drove to town. Visitors to Pargolovo and places farther away impressed one at first sight by their reasonable and dignified air. The tripper to Kratovsky Island could be recognized by his look of irrepressible gaiety. If I chanced to meet a long procession of wagoners walking lazily with the reins in their hands beside wagons, loaded with regular mountains of furniture, tables, chairs, ottomans and sofas, and domestic utilities of all sorts, frequently with a decrepit cook sitting on top of it all, guarding her master's property as though it were the apple of her eye. Or, if I saw boats heavily loaded with household goods crawling along the Neva or Fontonka to the Black River or the islands, the wagons and the boats were multiplied 10-fold, 100-fold, in my eyes. I fancied that everything was astir and moving. Everything was going in regular caravans to the summer villas. It seemed as though Petersburg threatened to become a wilderness, so that at last I felt ashamed, mortified, and sad that I had nowhere to go for the holidays, and no reason to go away. I was ready to go away with every wagon, to drive off with every gentleman of respectable appearance who took a cab. But no one, absolutely no one, invited me. It seemed they had forgotten me, as though really I were a stranger to them. I took long walks, succeeding, as I usually did, in quite forgetting where I was, when I suddenly found myself at the city gates. Instantly I felt light-hearted, and I passed the barrier and walked between cultivated fields and meadows, unconscious of fatigue, and feeling only all over as though a burden were falling off my soul. All the passers-by gave me such friendly looks that they seemed almost greeting me. They all seemed so pleased at something. They were all smoking cigars, every one of them, and I felt pleased as I never had before. It was as though I had suddenly found myself in Italy. So strong was the effect of nature upon a half-sick townsman like me, almost stifling, between city walls. There was something inexpressibly touching in nature round Petersburg, when at the approach of spring she puts forth all her might, all the powers bestowed on her by heaven, when she breaks into leaf, decks herself out, and spangles herself with flowers. Somehow I cannot help being reminded of a frail, consumptive girl, at whom one sometimes looks with compassion, sometimes with sympathetic love, whom sometimes one simply does not notice, though suddenly in one instant she becomes, as though by chance, inexplicably lovely and exquisite, and, impressed and intoxicated, one cannot help asking oneself what power made those sad, pensive eyes flash with such fire. What summoned the blood to those pale, wan cheeks? What bathed with passion those soft features? What set that bosom heaving? What so suddenly called strength, life, and beauty into the poor girl's face, making it gleam with such a smile, kindle with such bright, sparkling laughter? You look round, you seek for some, you conjecture. But the moment passes, and the next day you meet, maybe, the same pensive and preoccupied look as before. The same pale face, the same meek and timid movements, and even sometimes, and even signs of remorse, traces of a mortal anguish and regret for the fleeting distraction. And you grieve that the momentary beauty has faded so soon, never to return, that it flashed upon you so treacherously, so vainly. Grieve because you had not even time to love her. And yet my night was better than my day. This was how it happened. I came back to the town very late, and it had struck 10 as I was going towards my lodgings. My way lay along the canal embankment, where at that hour you never meet a soul. It is true that I live in a very remote part of the town. I walked along singing, for when I am happy, I am always humming to myself, like every happy man who has no friend or acquaintance with whom to share his joy. Suddenly, I had a most unexpected adventure. Leaning on the canal railing stood a woman with her elbows on the rail. She was apparently looking with great attention at the muddy water of the canal. She was wearing a very charming yellow hat and a jaunty little black mantle. She's a girl, and I am sure she is dark, I thought. She did not seem to fear my footsteps. That's not what that says. She did not seem to hear my footsteps, and did not even stir when I passed by with bated breath and loudly throbbing heart. Strange, I thought. She must be deeply absorbed in something. And all at once I stopped as though petrified. I heard a muffled sob. Yes, I was not mistaken. The girl was crying, and a minute later I heard sob after sob. Good heavens! My heart sank, and timid as I was with women, yet this was such a moment. I heard, took a step towards her. I turned, took a step towards her, and should have pronounced the word Madame, if I had not known that the exclamation has been uttered 1,000 times in every Russian society novel. It was only that reflection that stopped me, but while I was seeking for a word, the girl came to herself, looked round, started, cast down her eyes and slipped by me along the embankment. We are reading White Nights. Hi, City. Cast down her eyes and slipped by me along the embankment. I at once followed her, but she, divining this, left the embankment, crossed the road, and walked along the pavement. I dared not cross a street after her. My heart was fluttering like a captured bird. All at once a chance came to my aid. Along the same side of the pavement there suddenly came into sight, not far from the girl, a gentleman in evening dress, of dignified years, though by no means of dignified carriage. He was staggering and cautiously leaning against the wall. The girl flew straight as an arrow, with the timid haste one sees in all girls who do not want anyone to volunteer to accompany them home at night. And no doubt the staggering gentleman would not have pursued her if my good luck had not prompted him. Suddenly, without a word to anyone, the gentleman set off and flew full speed in pursuit of my unknown lady. She was racing like the wind, but the staggering gentleman was overtaken. But the staggering gentleman was overtook her. The girl uttered a shriek, and I bless my luck for the excellent knotted stick, which happened on occasion to be in my right hand. In a flash I was at the other side of the street. In a flash, the obtrusive gentleman had taken in the position, had grasped the irresistible argument, fallen back without a word, and only when we were very far away protested against my action in rather vigorous language. But his words hardly reached us. "Give me your arm," I said to the girl, "and he won't dare to annoy us further." She took my arm without a word, still trembling with excitement and terror. Oh, obtrusive gentleman, how I blessed you at that moment. I stole a glance at her. She was very charming and dark. I had guessed right. On her black eyelashes there was still glistened a tear. On her black eyelashes there still glistened a tear. From her recent terror, or her former grief, I don't know. But there was already a gleam of a smile on her lips. She too stole a glance at me, faintly blushed, and looked down. "There, you see, why did you drive me away? If I had been here, nothing would have happened." "But I did not know you. I thought that you too—" "Why, do you know me now?" "A little. Here, for instance. Why are you trembling?" "Oh, you are very right at first guess," I answered, delighted that my girl had intelligence. That is never out of place in company with beauty. "Yes, from the first glance you have guessed the sort of man you have to do with. Precisely. I am shy with women. I am agitated. I don't deny it. As much so as you were a minute ago, when that gentleman alarmed you. I am in some alarm now. It's like a dream, and I never guessed even in my sleep that I should ever talk with any woman." "What? Really?" "Yes. If my arm trembles, it is because it has never been held by a pretty hand like yours." "I am a complete stranger to women, that is. I have never been used to them. You see, I am alone. I don't even know how to talk to them. Here, I don't know now whether I have not said something silly to you. Tell me frankly. I assure you beforehand that I am not quick to take offense." "No, nothing, nothing. Quite the contrary. If you insist on my speaking frankly, I will tell you that women like such timidity. Taking a drink of water. And if you insist on my speaking frankly, I will tell you that women like such timidity. And if you want to know more, I like it too, and I won't drive you away till I get home." "You will make me," I said, breathless with delight, "lose my timidity, and then farewell to all my chances." "Chances? What chances? Of what? That's not so nice." "I beg your pardon. I am sorry. It was a slip of the tongue. But how can you expect one at such a moment to have no desire? To be liked, hey?" "Well, yes. But do, for goodness sake, be kind. Think what I am. Here, I am 26 and I have never seen anyone. How can I speak well, tactfully, and to the point? It will seem better to you when I have told you everything openly. I don't know how to be silent when my heart is speaking. Well, never mind. Believe me, not one woman, never, never. No acquaintance of any sort, and I do nothing but dream every day that at last I shall meet someone. Oh, if only you knew how often I have been in love in that way. Oh, if only you knew how often I have been in love in that way. How? With whom? Why, with no one. with an ideal, with the one I dream of in my sleep. I make up regular romances in my dreams. Ah, you don't know me. It's true, of course. I have met 2 or 3 women, but what sort of women were they? They were all landladies, But I shall make you laugh if I tell you that I have several times thought of speaking, just simply speaking, to some aristocratic lady in the street when she is alone, I need hardly say. Speaking to her, of course, timidly, respectfully, passionately, telling her that I am perishing in solitude, begging her not to send me away, saying that I have no chance of making the acquaintance of any woman, impressing upon her that it is a positive duty for a woman to not repulse so timid a prayer from such a luckless man as me. That, in fact, all I ask is that she should say 2 or 3 sisterly words with sympathy, should not repulse me at sight, should not repulse me at first sight, should take me on trust and listen to what I say, should laugh at me if she likes, encourage me, say 2 words to me, only 2 words, even though we never meet again afterwards. But you are laughing. However, that is why I am telling you. Don't be vexed. I am only laughing at your being your own enemy. And if you had tried, you would have succeeded, perhaps even though it had been in the street. The simpler the better. No kind-hearted woman, unless she were stupid or still more vexed about something at the moment, could bring herself to send you away without those 2 words which you ask for so timidly. But what am I saying? Of course she would take you for a madman. I was judging by myself. I know a good deal about other people's lives. Oh, thank you, I cried. You don't know what you have done for me now. I'm glad. But tell me, how did you find out that I was the sort of woman with whom you think worthy of attention and friendship? In fact, not a landlady, as you say. What made you decide to come up to me? What made me? But you were alone. That gentleman was too insolent. It's night. You must admit that it was a duty. No, I mean before. On the other side. You know you meant to come up to me. On the other side. Really, I don't know how to answer. I am afraid to. Do you know I have been happy today? I walked along singing. I went out into the country. I have never had such happy moments. Perhaps it was my fancy. Forgive me for referring to it. I fancied you were crying, and I could not bear to hear it. It made my heart ache. Oh, my goodness. Surely I might be troubled about you? Surely there was no harm in feeling brotherly compassion for you. I beg your pardon, I said compassion. Well, in short, surely you would not be offended at my involuntary impulse to go up to you. Stop, that's enough, don't talk of it, said the girl, looking down and pressing my hand. It's my fault for having spoken of it, but I am glad I was not mistaken in you. But here, I am home. I must go down this turning. It's 2 steps from here. Goodbye. Thank you. Surely you don't mean that we shall never see each other again. Surely this is not to be the end. You see, said the girl, laughing. At first, you only wanted 2 words, and now? However, I won't say anything. Perhaps we shall meet. I shall come here tomorrow, I said. Oh, forgive me, I am already making demands. Yes, you are not very patient. You are almost insisting. Listen, I interrupted her. Forgive me if I tell you something else. I tell you what. I can't help coming here tomorrow. I am a dreamer. I have so little real life that I look upon such moments as this now as so rare that I cannot help going over such moments again in my dreams. I shall be dreaming of you all night, a week, a whole year. I shall certainly come here tomorrow, just here to this place, just at the same hour. And I shall be happily remembering today. This place is so dear to me already. I have already two or three such places in Petersburg. I once shed tears over memories, like you. Who knows, perhaps you were weeping 10 minutes ago over some memory. But forgive me, I have forgotten myself again. Perhaps you have once been particularly happy here. Very good, said the girl. Perhaps I will come here tomorrow too, at 10 o'clock. I see that I can't forbid you. The fact is, I have to be here. Don't imagine that I am making an appointment with you. I tell you beforehand that I have to be here on my own account. But, well, I tell you straight out, I don't mind if you do come. To begin with, something unpleasant might happen as it did today, but never mind that. In short, I should simply like to see you, to say 2 words to you. Only, mind, you must not think the worse of me now. Don't think I make appointments so lightly. I shouldn't make it except that. But let that be my secret. Only a compact beforehand. A compact? Speak, tell me all beforehand. I agree to anything, I am ready for anything, I cried with delight. I answer for myself, I will be obedient, respectful. You know me. It's just because I do know you that I ask you to come tomorrow, said the girl, laughing. I know you perfectly, but mind you will come on the condition, in the first place. Only be good, do what I ask, you see, I speak frankly. You won't fall in love with me. That's impossible, I assure you. I am ready for friendship. Here's my hand. But you mustn't fall in love with me, I beg you. I swear, I cried, gripping her hand. Hush, don't swear. I know you are ready to flare up like gunpowder. Don't think ill of me for saying so. If only you knew. I, too, have no one to whom I can say a word, whose advice I can ask. Of course one does not look for an adviser in the street, but you are an exception. I know you as though we had been friends for 20 years. You won't deceive me, will you? You will see. The only thing is, I don't know how I'm going to survive the next 24 hours. Sleep soundly. Good night. And remember that I have trusted you already. But you exclaimed so nicely just now, surely one can't be held responsible for every feeling, even for brotherly sympathy. Do you know, that was so nicely said, that the idea struck me at once that I might confide in you. For God's sake, do! But about what? What is it? Wait till tomorrow. Meanwhile, let that be a secret. So much the better for you. It will give it a faint So much the better for you. It will give it a faint flavor of romance. Perhaps I will tell you tomorrow and perhaps not. I will talk to you a little more beforehand. We will get to know each other better. Oh, yes, I will tell you all about myself tomorrow. But what has happened? It is as though a miracle has befallen me. My God, where am I? Come, tell me, aren't you glad that you were not angry and did not drive me away at the first moment? as any other woman would have done. In 2 minutes you have made me happy forever. Yes, happy. Who knows? Perhaps you have reconciled me with myself, solved my doubts. Perhaps such moments come upon me. But there, I will tell you all about it tomorrow. You shall know everything, everything. Very well. I consent. You shall begin. Agreed. Goodbye till tomorrow. Till tomorrow. And we parted. I walked about all night. I could not make up my mind to go home. I was so happy. Tomorrow. Second night. Well, so you have survived, she said, pressing both my hands. I've been here for the last 2 hours. You don't know what a state I have been in all day. I know. But to business. Do you know why I have come? Not to talk nonsense as I did yesterday. Not to talk nonsense as I did yesterday. I tell you what. We must behave more sensibly in the future. I thought a great deal about it last night. In what way? In what must we be more sensible? I am ready for my part, but really, nothing more sensible has happened to me in my life than this, now. Really? In the first place, I beg you not to squeeze my hand so. Secondly, I must tell you that I spent a long time thinking about you and feeling doubtful today. And how did it end? How did it end? The upshot of it is that we must begin all over again, because the conclusion I reached today was that I don't know you at all, that I behaved like a baby last night, like a little girl. And, of course, the fact of it is that it's my soft heart that is to blame. I sang my own praises, as one always does in the end when That is, I sang my own praises, as one always does in the end when one analyzes one's conduct. And therefore, to correct my mistake, I've made up my mind to find out all about you, minutely. But as I have no one from whom I can find out anything, you must tell me everything fully yourself. Well, what sort of man are you? Come, make haste. Begin. Tell me your whole story. Tell me your whole history. My history? I cried in alarm. My history? But who has told you I have a history? I have no history. Then how have you lived if you have no history? She interrupted, laughing. Absolutely without history. I have lived, as they say, keeping myself to myself, that is, utterly alone. Alone. Entirely alone. Do you know what it means to be alone? But how alone? Do you mean you never saw anyone? Oh, no, I see people, of course, but still I am alone. Why? Do you never talk to anyone? Strictly speaking, with no one. Who are you, then? Explain yourself. Stay, I guess. Most likely, like me, you have a grandmother. She is blind and will never let me go anywhere, so that I have to almost forgotten. She is blind and will never let me go anywhere, so that I have almost forgotten how to talk. And when I played some pranks 2 years ago, she saw there was no holding me in. She called me up and pinned my dress to hers, and ever since we sat like that for days together. She knits a stocking though she's blind. She knits a stocking though she's blind, and I sit beside her, sew or read aloud to her. It's such a queer habit. Here, for 2 years, I've been pinned to her. Good heavens, what misery! But no, I haven't a grandmother like that. Well, if you haven't, why do you sit at home? Listen, do you want to know the sort of man I am? Yes, yes. In the strict sense of the word? In the very strictest sense of the word. Very well. I am a type. Type? Type? What sort of type? Cried the girl, laughing, as though she had not had a chance of laughing for a whole year. Yes, it's very amusing talking to you. Look, here's a seat. Let us sit down. No one is passing here. No one will hear us. Again. And begin your history, for it's no good your telling me. I know you have a history, only you are concealing it. To begin with, what is a type? A type? A type is an original. It's an absurd person, I said, infected by her childish... I need more water. I said, infected by her childish laughter. It's a character. Listen, do you know what is meant by a dreamer? A dreamer? Indeed, I should think I do know. I am a dreamer myself. Sometimes, as I sit down by grandmother, all sorts of things come into my head. Why, when one begins dreaming about one's fancy, run away. Why, when one begins dreaming, one lets one's fancy run away with one. Why, I marry a Chinese prince, though sometimes it is a good thing to dream. But goodness knows, especially when one has something to think of apart from dreams, added the girl, this time rather seriously. Excellent. If you have been married to a Chinese emperor, you will quite understand me. Come, listen. But 1 minute. I don't know your name yet. At last. You've been in no hurry to think of it. Oh, my goodness. It never entered my head. I felt quite happy as it was. My name is I literally practiced this. Are you kidding me? Nastenka. My name is Nastenka. La 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 la. My name is Nastenka. Nastenka. I need more water. My name is Nastenka. Nastenka. And nothing else? Nothing else. Why is that not enough for you, you insatiable person? Not enough. On the contrary, it is a great deal, a very great deal. Nastenka, you kind girl, if you are Nastenka for me the first. But what the fuck is this sentence? You kind girl, if you are Nastenka for me from the first. You kind girl, if you are Nastenka for me from the first. Quite so. Well, listen, Nastenka. Now for this absurd history. I sat down beside her, assumed a pedantically serious attitude, and began as though reading from a manuscript. There are, Nastenka, though you may not know it, strange nooks in Petersburg. It seems as though the same sun as shines for all Petersburg people. Oh dear. It seems as though the same sun as shines for all Petersburg people does not peep into those spots. I guess I'm just going to start the whole paragraph over again because I am an hour in and clearly illiterate. There are, Nastenka, though you may not know it, strange nooks in Petersburg. It seems as though the same sun as shines for all Petersburg people does not peep into those spots, but some other different new one, bespoken expressly for those nooks, and it throws a different light on everything. In these corners, dear Nastenka, quite a different life is lived, quite unlike the life that is surging round us, but such as perhaps exist in some unknown realm, not among us in our serious, over-serious time. Well, that life is a mixture of something purely fantastic, fervently ideal, with something, alas, Nastenka, dingily prosaic and ordinary, not to say incredibly vulgar.
Phew! Great heavens! What a preface! What do I hear?
Listen, Nastenka. It seems to me I shall never be tired of calling you Nastenka. Let me tell you that in these corners live strange people. Dreamers. The dreamer, if you want an exact definition, is not a human being, but a creature of an I'm gonna bash my head into the wall. The dreamer, if you want an exact definition, is not a human being, but a creature of an intermediate sort. For the most part, he settles in some inaccessible corner, as though hiding from the light of day. Once he slips into his corner, he grows to it like a snail, or, anyway, he is in that respect very much like that remarkable creature, which is an animal and a house both at once, and is called a tortoise. Why do you suppose he is so fond of his four walls, which are invariably painted green, grimy, dismal, and reeking unpardonably of tobacco smoke? Why is it that when this absurd gentleman is visited by one of his few acquaintances, and he ends by getting rid of all his friends, why does this absurd person meet him with such embarrassment, changing countenance, and overcome with confusion, as though he had only just committed some crime within his four walls, as though he had been forging counterfeit notes, or as though he were writing verses to be sent to a journal with an anonymous letter, in which he states that the real poet is dead, and that his friend thinks it is his sacred duty to publish his things. Why, tell me, Nastenka, why is it conversation is not easy between the two friends? Why is there no laughter? Why does no lively word fly from the tongue of the perplexed newcomer, who at other times may be very fond of laughter, lively words, conversation about the fair sex, and other cheerful subjects? And why does this friend, probably a new friend and on his first visit, for there will hardly be a second, and the friend will never come again, why is the friend himself so concerned, so tongue-tied, why is the friend himself so confused, so tongue-tied, in spite of his wit, if he has any, as he looks at the downcast face of his host, who, in his turn, becomes utterly helpless and at his wit's end, after gigantic but fruitless efforts to smooth things over and enliven the conversation, to show his knowledge of polite society, to talk, too, of the fair sex, and by such humble endeavor to please the poor man, who, like a fish out of water, has mistaken
has mistakenly come to visit him. Why does the gentleman, all at once, remembering some very necessary business which never existed, suddenly seize his hat and hurriedly make off, snatching away his hand from the warm grip of his host, who was trying his utmost to show his regret and retrieve the lost position? Why does the friend chuckle as he goes out the door, and swear never to come and see this queer creature again, though the queer creature is really a very good fellow, and at the same time he cannot refuse his imagination to the little diversion of comparing the queer fellow's countenance during their conversation with the expression of an unhappy kitten treacherously captured, roughly handled, frightened, and subjected to all sorts of indignities by children, till, utterly crestfallen, it hides away from them under a chair in the dark, and there must needs at its leisure bristle up, spit, and wash its insulted face with both paws, and long afterwards look angrily at life and nature, and even at the bits saved from the master's dinner for it by the sympathetic housekeeper. "Listen," interrupted Nastenka, who had listened to me all the time in amazement, opened her eyes and her little mouth. "Listen. I don't know in the least why it happened and why you asked me such absurd questions. All I know is that this adventure must have happened word for word to you." "Doubtless," I answered, with the gravest face. "Well, since there is no doubt about it, go on," said Nastenka, because I want very much to know how it will end." "I want you to know, Nastenka, what our hero, that is I, for the hero of the whole business was my humble self, did in his corner. You want to know why I lost my head and was upset for the whole day by the unexpected visit of a friend. You want to know why I was so startled, why I blushed when the door of my room was opened, why I was not able to entertain my visitor, and why I was crushed under the weight of my own hospitality." "Why, yes, answered Nastenka. "That's the point. Listen, you describe it all splendidly, but couldn't you perhaps describe it a little less splendidly? You talk as though you were reading it out of a book." "Nastenka," I answered in a stern and dignified voice, hardly able to keep from laughing. "Dear Nastenka, I know I describe splendidly, but, excuse me, I don't know how else to do it. At this moment, dear Nastenka, at this moment, I am like the spirit of King Solomon, when, after lying 1,000 years under 7 seals, At this moment, dear Nastenka, at this moment I am like the spirit of King Solomon when, after lying 1,000 years under 7 seals in his urn, those 7 seals were at last taken off. At this moment, Nastenka, when we have met at last after such a long separation, for I have known you for ages, Nastenka, because I have been looking for someone for ages, and that is a sign that it was you I was looking for. And it was ordained that we should meet now. At this moment, 1,000 valves have opened in my head, and I let myself flow in a river of words, or I shall choke. And so I beg you not to interrupt me, Nastenka, but listen humbly and obediently, or I will be silent." No, not at all. Go on, I won't say a word." I will continue. There is, my friend Nastenka, 1 hour in my day which I like extremely, That is the hour when almost all business, work, and duties are over, and everyone is hurrying home to dinner, to lie down, to rest, and on the way are all cogitating? Cogitating? Thank you for the hydrate. Here I go, blasting my eardrums again. Okay. Where's the word? It just gets so frustrating that my mouth is so dry. And I hate making mistakes. It slows down the progress. People don't want to hear it. They don't want to hear mistakes. They want perfection. And everyone is hurrying home to dinner, to lie down, to rest, and on the way are all cogitating on other, more cheerful subjects relating to their evenings, their nights, and all the rest of their free time. At that hour, our hero, for allow me, Nastenka, to tell my story in the third person, for one feels awfully ashamed to tell it in the first person. And so that our hero, who had his work too, was pacing along after the others, but a strange feeling of pleasure set his pale, rather crumple-looking face working. He looked not with indifference on the evening glow which was slowly fading on the cold Petersburg sky. When I say he looked, I am lying. He did not look at it, but saw it as it were, without realizing, as though tired or preoccupied with some other more interesting subject, so that he could scarcely spare a glance for anything about him. He was pleased because till next day he was released from business irksome to him, and happy as a schoolboy let out from the classroom to his games and mischief. Took a look at him. Take a look at him, Nastenka. You will see at once that joyful emotion has already had an effect on his weak nerves and morbidly excited fancy. You see, he is thinking of something. Of dinner, do you imagine? Of the evening? What is he looking at like that? Is it at that gentleman of dignified appearance who is bowing so picturesquely to the lady who rolls by in a carriage drawn by prancing horses? No, Nastenka. What are all those trivialities to him now? He is rich now, with his own individual life. He has suddenly become rich, and it is not for nothing that the fading sunset shreds its farewell gleams so gaily before him, and calls forth a swarm of impressions from his warmed heart. Now he hardly notices the road, on which the tiniest details at other times would strike him. Now, the goddess of fancy, if you have read Zhukovsky, dear Nastenka, has already with fantastic hand spun her golden wrap and begun weaving upon it patterns of marvelous magic. And who knows, maybe her fantastic hand has borne him to the seventh crystal, heaven, far from the excellent granite pavement on which he was walking his way. Try stopping him now. Ask him suddenly where he is standing now. Try stopping him now. Ask him suddenly where he is standing now, through what street he is going. He will, probably remember nothing, neither where he was going nor where he is standing now. And flushing with vexation, he will certainly tell some lie to save appearances. That is why he starts, almost cries out, and looks round with horror when a respectable old lady stops him politely in the middle of the pavement and asks her way. Frowning with vexation, he strides on, scarcely noticing that more than one passer-by smiles, and looks round to look after him, and that a little girl, moving out of his way in alarm, laughs aloud, gazing open-eyed at his broad meditative smile and gesticulations. But fancy catches up in its playful flight the old woman, the curious passers-by, and the laughing child, and the peasants spending their nights in their barges on Fontanka. Our hero, let us suppose, is walking along the canal side at the moment, and is capriciously weaves everyone and everything into the canvas like a fly in a spider's web. And it is only after the queer fellow has returned to his comfortable den with fresh stories for his mind to work on, has sat down and finished his dinner, that he comes to himself, when Matrona, who waits upon him, always thoughtful and depressed, clears the table and gives him his pipe. He comes to himself then, and recalls with surprise that he has dined, though he has absolutely no notion how it has happened. It has grown dark in the room. His soul is sad and empty. The whole kingdom of fancies drops to pieces about him. Yep, that's what that sentence said. Drops to pieces without a trace, without a sound, floats away like a dream, and he cannot remember himself what he was dreaming. But a vague sensation faintly stirs his heart and sets it aching. Some new desire temptingly tickles and excites his fancy, and imperceptibly invokes a swarm of fresh phantoms. Stillness reigns in the little room. Imagination is fostered by solitude and idleness. It is faintly smoldering, faintly simmering, like the water with which old Matrona is making her coffee, as she moves quietly about in the kitchen close by. Now it breaks out spasmodically, and the book, picked up aimlessly and at random, drops from the dreamer's hand before he has reached the 3rd page. His imagination is again stirred and at work, and again a new world, a new fascinating life opens vistas before him. A fresh dream, fresh happiness, a fresh rush of delicate, voluptuous poison. What is real life to him? To his corrupted eyes we live, you and I, Nastenka, so torpidly, slowly, insipidly. In his eyes, we are all so dissatisfied with our fate, so exhausted by our life. And truly, see how at first sight everything is cold and morose, as though ill-humored among us. Poor things, thinks our dreamer, and it is no wonder that he thinks it. Look at these phantasms. Poor things, thinks our dreamer. It is no wonder that he thinks it. Look at these magic phantasms, which so enchantingly, so whimsically, so carelessly and freeing group before him in such a magic animated picture, in which the most prominent figure in the foreground is, of course, himself, our dreamer, in his precious person. See what varied adventures, what an endless swarm of ecstatic dreams. You ask, perhaps, what he is dreaming of. Why is that? Why? Of everything. Of the lot of the poet, first unrecognized, then crowned with laurels, of friendship with Hoffman, St. Bartholomew's Night, of Diana Vernon, of playing the hero at the taking of Kazan by Ivan Vasilyevich, of Clara Mowbray, of Effie Deans, of the council of the prelates and Huss before them, and the rising of the dead in Robert the Devil. Do you remember the music? It smells of the churchyard, of Minna and Brenda, of the Battle of Berenzia, of the reading of a poem at Countess Vidi's, of Danton, of Cleopatra et soi amanti, et soi, fucking whatever the fuck, I don't know. Bing. E suoi amanti. Got it. Fucking where was I? Of the reading of a poem at Countess Vidi's, of Danton, of Cleopatra e suoi amanti, of a little house in Colomna, of a little home of one's own, and beside one a dear creature who listens to one on an evening. Of a little home of one's own, and beside one a dear creature who listens to one on a winter's evening, opening her little mouth and eyes as you are listening to me now, my angel. No, Nastenka, what is there? What is there for him, voluptuous sluggard, in this life, for which you and I have such a longing? He thinks that this is a poor, pitiful life, not foreseeing that for him too, maybe, sometime the mournful hour may strike, when for one day of that pitiful life he would give all his years of fantasy, and would give them not only for joy and for happiness, but without caring to make distinctions in that hour of sadness, remorse, and unchecked grief. But so far that threatening has not arrived. He desires nothing, because he is superior to all desire, because he has everything, because he is satiated, because he is the artist of his own life, and creates it for himself every hour to suit his latest whim. And you know this fantastic world of fairyland is so easily, so naturally created, as though it were not a delusion. Indeed, he is ready to believe at some moments that all his life is not suggested by feeling, is not mirage, not a delusion of the imagination, but that it is concrete, real, substantial. Why is it, Nastenka? Why is it, at such moments, one holds one's breath? Why? By what sorcery? Through what incomprehensible caprice? Is the pulse quickened? Does a tear start from the dreamer's eye, while his pale moist cheeks glow, while his whole being is suffused with an inexpressible sense of consolation? Why is it that whole sleepless nights pass like a flash in inexhaustible gladness and happiness, And when the dawn gleams rosy at the window and daybreak floods the gloomy room with uncertain, fantastic light, as in Petersburg, our dreamer, worn out and exhausted, flings himself on his bed and drops asleep with thrills of delight in his morbidly overwrought spirit, and with a weary, sweet ache in his heart. Yes, Nastenka, one deceives oneself and unconsciously believes that the true passion and unconsciously believes that real true passion is stirring one's soul. One unconsciously believes that there is something living, tangible in one's immaterial dreams. And is it delusion? Here, love, for instance, is bound with all its fathomless joy, all its torturing agonies in his bosom. Only look at him, and you will be convinced. Would you believe looking at him, Would you believe, looking at him, dear Nastenka, that he has never known her whom he loves in his ecstatic life, in his ecstatic dreams? Can it be that he only has seen her in seductive visions, and that... I'm gonna go to the bathroom. I need a break. This is too much. I need a break. Okay, we will continue. Can it be that he has only seen her in seductive visions, that this passion has been holding nothing but a dream? Surely they must have spent years hand in hand together, alone the two of them, casting off all the world and each uniting his or her life with the other's. Surely when the hour of parting came, she must have lain sobbing and grieving on his bosom, heedless of the tempest raging under the sullen sky, heedless of the wind which snatches and bears away the tears from her black eyelashes. Can all of that have been a dream? And that garden, dejected, forsaken, run wild, with its little moss-grown paths, solitary, gloomy, where they used to walk so happily together, where they hoped, grieved, loved each other so long and so fondly. And that queer ancestral house where she spent so many years, lonely and sad with her morose old husband, always silent and splenetic, who frightened them, while timid as children, they hid their love from each other. What torments they suffered, what agonies of terror, how innocent, how pure was their love, and I need hardly say, Naztenka, malicious people were. And good heavens, surely he met her afterwards, far from their native shores, under alien skies, in the hot south, in the divinely eternal city, in the dazzling splendor of the ball to the crash of music, in a palazzo, it must be in a palazzo, drowned in a sea of lights, on the balcony, wreathed in myrtle and roses, where, recognizing him, she hurriedly removes her mask and whispering, "I am free," flings herself trembling into his arms, and with a cry of rapture, clinging to one another. In one instant they forgot their sorrow and their parting, and all their agonies. And the gloomy house, and the old man, and the dismal garden in that distant land, and the seat on which, with a last passionate kiss, she tore herself away from his arms, numb with anguish and despair. Oh, Naztenka, you must admit that one would start, betray confusion, and blush like a schoolboy who had just suffered, in his pocket, an apple stolen from a neighbor's garden, when your uninvited visitor, some stalwart, lanky fellow, a festive soul fond of a joke, opens your door and shouts out as though nothing were happening. "My dear boy, I have this minute come from Pavlovsk. My goodness, the old count is dead. Unutterable happiness is close at hand, and people arrive from Pavlovsk." Finishing my pathetic appeal, I paused pathetically. I remembered that I had an intense desire to force myself to laugh, for I was already feeling that malignant demon was stirring within me, that there was a lump in my throat, that my chin was beginning to twitch, and that my eyes were growing more and more moist. I expected Naztenka, who listened to me opening her clever eyes, would break into her childish, irrepressible laugh, and I was already regretting that I had gone so far, that I had unnecessarily described what had long been simmering in my heart, about which I could speak as though from a written account of it, because I had long ago passed judgment on myself, and now could not resist reading it, making my confession, without expecting to be understood. But to my surprise she was silent, waiting a little, then she faintly pressed my hand, and with timid sympathy asked, "Surely you haven't lived like that all your life?" "All my life, Naztenka," I answered. "All my life, and it seems to me I shall go on so to the end." "No, that won't do," she said uneasily. "That must not be, and so, maybe, I shall spend all my life beside grandmother. Do you know, it is It is not at all good to live like that. I know, Nastenka, I know, I cried, unable to restrain my feelings longer. And I realize now more than ever that I have lost all my best years. And now I know it and feel it more painfully from recognizing that God has sent me you, my good angel, to tell me that and show it. Now that I sit beside you and talk to you, it is strange for me to think of the future, for in the future, there is loneliness again. Again, this musty, useless life. And what shall I have to dream of when I have been so happy in reality beside you? Oh, you may be blessed, dear girl, for not having repulsed me at first, for enabling me to say that for 2 evenings at least I have lived. Oh, no, no, cried Nastenka, and tears glistened in her eyes. No, it mustn't be so any more. We must not part like that. What are 2 evenings? Oh, Nastenka, Nastenka, do you know how far you have reconciled me to myself? Do you know that I shall not think so ill of myself as I have at some moments? Do you know that, maybe, I shall soon leave off grieving over the crime and sin of my life, for such a life is a crime and a sin? And do not imagine that I have been exaggerating anything. For goodness' sake, don't think that, Nastenka, for at times such misery comes over me, such misery, because it begins to seem to me at such times that I am incapable of beginning a life in real life, because it has seemed to me that I have lost all touch, all instinct for the actual, the real, because at last I have cursed myself, because after my fantastic nights have moments of returning sobriety, which are awful. Meanwhile, you hear the whirl and roar of the crowd in the vortex of life around you. You see, men living in reality. You see that life for them is not forbidden, that their life does not float away like a dream, like a vision, that their life is being eternally renewed, eternally youthful, and not 1 hour of it is the same as another. And not 1 hour of it is the same as another. I'm going to put my head through the wall. And not 1 hour of it is the same as another. While fancy is so spiritless, monotonous to vulgarity and easily scared, the slave of shadows, of idea, the slave of the first cloud that shrouds the sun, and overcasts with depression the true Petersburg heart so devoted to the sun. And what is fancy in depression? One feels that this inexhaustible fancy is weary at last and worn out with continual exercise, because one is growing into manhood, outgrowing one's old ideals. They are being shattered into fragments, into dust. If there is no other life, one must build up one from the fragments. And while the soul longs and craves for something else, and meanwhile the soul longs and craves for something else. And in vain the dreamer rakes over his old dreams, as though seeking a spark among the embers, to fan them into flame, to warm his chilled heart by the rekindled fire, and to rouse up in it again all that was so sweet, that touched his heart, that set his blood boiling, drew tears from his eyes, and so luxuriously deceived him. Do you know, Nastenka, the point I have reached? Do you know that I am forced now to celebrate the anniversary of my own sensations, the anniversary of which was once so sweet, which never existed in reality? For this anniversary is kept in memory of those same foolish shadowy dreams. And to do this, because those foolish dreams are no more, because I have nothing to earn them with, You know even dreams do not come for nothing. Do you know that I love now to recall and visit certain dates, the places where I was once happy in my own? I love to build my present in harmony with the irrevocable past, and I often wander like a shadow, aimless, sad, and dejected, about the streets and crooked lanes of Petersburg. What memories they are! To remember, for instance, that here, just a year ago, just at this time, at this hour, on this pavement, I wandered just as lonely, just as dejected as today. And one remembers that then one's dreams were sad, and though the past was no better, one feels as though it had somehow been better, and that life was more peaceful. That one was free from the black thoughts that haunt me now. That one was free from the gnawing of conscience, the gloomy, sullen gnawing which now gives me no rest by day or by night. And one asks oneself, where are one's dreams? And one shakes one's head and says, how rapidly the years fly by. And again, one asks oneself, what has one done with one's years? Where have you buried your best days? Have you lived or not? Look, one says to oneself, look how cold the world is growing. Some more years will pass, and after them will come gloomy solitude. Then will come old age trembling on its crutch. And after it misery and desolation. Your fantastic world will grow pale. Your dreams will fade and die and will fall like the yellow leaves from the trees. Oh, Nastenka, you know it will be sad to be left alone, utterly alone, and to not have even anything to regret. Nothing, absolutely nothing. For all that you have lost, all was nothing, stupid, simple nullity. There has been nothing but dreams. Come, don't work on my feelings any more, said Nastenka, wiping away a tear which was trickling down her cheek. Now it's over. Now we shall be two together. Now whatever happens to me, we will never part. Listen, I am a simple girl. I have not had much education, though grandmother did get a teacher for me, but I truly understand you. For all that you have described I have been through myself. When grandmother pinned me to her dress, of course I should not have described it so well as you have. I am not educated, she added timidly, for she was still feeling a sort of respect for my pathetic eloquence and lofty style. But I am very glad that you have been quite open with me. Now I know you thoroughly, all of you. And do you know what? I want to tell you my history too, all without concealment, and after that you must give me advice. You are a very clever man. Will you promise to give me advice? Ah, Nastenka, I cried. Though I have never given advice, still less sensible advice, yet I see now that if we always go on like this, that it will be very sensible, and that each of us will give the other a great deal of sensible advice. Well, my pretty Nastenka, what sort of advice do you want? Tell me frankly, at this moment I am so gay and happy, so bold and sensible, that it won't be difficult for me to find words. No, no, Nastenka interrupted, laughing. I don't only want sensible advice, I want warm brotherly advice, as though you had been fond of me all your life. Agreed, Nastenka, agreed, I cried, delighted. And if I had been fond of you for 20 years, I could have been fonder of you than I am now. Your hand? Said Nastenka. Here it is, said I, giving her my hand. And so let us begin my history. Gotta drink water. Naztenka's history. Half my story you know already. That is, you know that I have an old grandmother. If the other half is as brief as that, I interrupted, laughing. Be quiet and listen. First of all, you must agree not to interrupt me, or else perhaps I shall get in the muddle. Or else perhaps I shall get in a muddle. Come, listen quietly. I have an old grandmother. I came into her hands when I was quite a little girl, for my father and mother are dead. It must be supposed that grandmother was once richer, for now she recalls better days. She taught me French, and then got a teacher for me. When I was 15, and now I am 17, we gave up having lessons. It was at that time that I got into mischief. What I did, I won't tell you. It's enough to say that it wasn't very important. But grandmother called me to her one morning and said that she was blind and she could not look after me. She took a pin and pinned my dress to hers and said that we should sit like this for the rest of our lives if, of course, I did not become a better girl. In fact, at first it was impossible to get away from her. I had to work, to read, and to study, all beside grandmother. I tried to deceive her once and persuaded Fekla to sit in my place. Fekla is our charwoman. She is deaf. Fekla sat there instead of me. Grandmother was asleep in her armchair at that time, and I went off to see a friend close by. Well, it ended in trouble. Grandmother woke up while I was out and asked some questions. She thought I was still sitting quietly in my place. Fekla saw that grandmother was asking her something, but could not tell what it was. She wondered what to do, undid the pin, and ran away. At this point, Nastenka stopped and began laughing. I laughed with her. She left off at once. I tell you what, don't you laugh at grandmother. I laugh because it's funny. What can I do since grandmother is like that? But yet I am fond of her. In her way. But yet I am fond of her in a way. Oh, well, I did catch it that time. I had to sit down in my place at once, and after that I was not allowed to stir. Oh, I forgot to tell you that our house belongs to us. That is, to grandmother. It is a little wooden house with 3 windows, as old as grandmother herself, with a little upper story. Well, there moved into our upper story a new lodger. Then you had an old lodger, I observed casually. Yes, of course, answered Nastenka. And one who knew how to hold his tongue better than you do. In fact, he hardly ever used his tongue at all. He was a dumb, blind, lame, dry-up little old man, so that at last he could not go on living, he died. So then we had to find a new lodger, for we could not live without a lodger. The rent, together with grandmother's pension, is almost all we have. But the new lodger, as luck would have it, was a young man, a stranger not of these parts. As he did not haggle over the rent, grandmother accepted him, and only afterwards she asked me, Tell me, Nastenka, what is our lodger like? Is he young or old? I did not want to lie, so I told grandmother that he wasn't exactly young, and that he wasn't old. And is he pleasant-looking? Asked grandmother. Again, I did not want to tell a lie. Yes, he is pleasant-looking, grandmother, I said. And grandmother said, Oh, what a nuisance, what a nuisance. I tell you this, grandchild, that you may not be looking after him. What times are these? Why a paltry lodger like this? and he must be pleasant-looking too. It was very different in old days. Grandmother was always regretting...
Yes, he is pleasant-looking, Grandmother, I said, and Grandmother said, Oh, what a nuisance, what a nuisance! I tell you this, grandchild, that you may not be looking after him. What times are these? Why, a paltry lodger like this, and he must be pleasant-looking too. It was very different in the old days. Grandmother was always regretting the old days. She was younger in old days, and the sun was warmer in old days, and cream did not turn so sour in old days. It was always the old days. I would sit still and hold my tongue and think to myself, why did Grandmother suggest it to me? Why did she ask whether the lodger was young and good-looking? But that was all. I just thought it, began counting my stitches again, went on knitting my stocking, and forgot all about it. Well, one morning the lodger came in to see us. He asked about a promise to paper his rooms. One thing led to another. Grandmother was talkative, and she said, Go, Nastenka, into my bedroom and bring me my reckoner. I jumped at once. I blushed all over, I don't know why, and forgot I was sitting pinned to Grandmother instead of quietly undoing the pin, so that the lodger could not see. I jumped so that Grandmother's chair moved. When I saw that the lodger knew all about me now, I blushed. I blushed, stood still as though I had been shot, and suddenly began to cry. I felt so ashamed and miserable at that minute that I didn't know where to look. Grandmother called out, What are you waiting for? And I went worse than ever. When the lodger saw that I was ashamed on his account, he bowed and went away. After that, I felt ready to die at the least sound in the passage. It's the lodger, I kept thinking, stealthily undid the pin and case, but it always turned out not to be. He never came. A fortnight passed. The lodger sent word through Fiocla that he had a great number of French books, and that they were all good books I might read. So would not Grandmother like me to read them, that I might not be dull? Grandmother agreed with gratitude, but kept asking if they were moral books, or if the books were immoral, it would be out of the question. For if the books were immoral, it would be out of the question. One would learn evil from them. And what should I learn, Grandmother? What is there written in them? Ah, she said, what's described in them is how young men seduce virtuous girls, how on the excuse that they want to marry them, they carry them off from their parents' houses, how afterwards they leave these unhappy girls to their fate, and they perish in the most pitiful way. I read a great many books, said Grandmother, and it is all so well described that one sits up all night and reads them on the sly. So, mind you don't read them, Nastenka, said she. What books has he sent? They are all Walter Scott's novels, Grandmother. Walter Scott's novels? But stay, isn't there some trick about it? Look, hasn't he stuck a love letter among them? No, Grandmother, I said, there isn't a love letter. But look under the binding. They sometimes stuff it under the bindings, the rascals. No, Grandmother, there's nothing under the binding. Well, that's all right. So we began reading Walter Scott,
and in a month or so we had read almost half. Then he sent us more and more. He sent us Pushkin too, so that at last I could not get on without a book, and left off dreaming of how fine it would be to marry a Chinese prince. That's how things were when I chanced one day to meet our lodger on the stairs. Grandmother had sent me to fetch something. He stopped, I blushed, and he blushed. He laughed, though, said good morning to me, asked after grandmother, and said, "Well, have you read the books?" I answered that I have. "Which do you like best?" he asked. I said, "Ivanhoe and Pushkin best of all." And so our talk ended for that time. A week later I met him again on the stairs. That time grandmother had sent me. I wanted to get something from... That time grandmother had not sent me. I wanted to get something for myself. It was past 2, and the lodger used to come home at that night. At that time. "Good afternoon," said he. I said good afternoon too. "Aren't you dull," said he, "sitting all day with your grandmother?" When he asked that, I blushed. I don't know why. I felt ashamed, and again I felt offended. I suppose because other people had begun to ask me about that. I wanted to go away without answering, but I hadn't the strength. "Listen," he said, "you're a good girl. Excuse my speaking to you like that, but I assure you that I wish for your welfare quite as much as your grandmother. Have you no friends that you could go and visit?" I told him I hadn't any, that I had had no friend but Mashenka, and she had gone away to Pskov. "Listen," he said, "would you like to go to the theater with me?" "To the theater? What about grandmother?" "But you must go without your grandmother's knowing it," he said. "No," I said, "I don't want to deceive grandmother. Goodbye." "Well, goodbye," he answered, and said nothing more. Only after dinner he came to see us, sat a long time talking to grandmother, asked her whether she had ever went out anywhere, whether she had acquaintances, and suddenly said, "I have taken a box at the opera for this evening. They are giving The Barber of Seville. My friends meant to go, but afterwards refused, so the ticket is left on my hands." "The Barber of Seville," cried grandmother. "Why, the same they used to act in the old days?" "Yes, it's the same barber," he said, and glanced at me. I saw what it meant and turned crimson, and my heart began throbbing with suspense. "To be sure, I know it," said grandmother. "Why, I took the part of Rosina myself in the old days. A private performance." "So wouldn't you like to go today?" said the lodger, "or my ticket will be wasted." "By all means, let us go," said grandmother. "Why shouldn't we? And my Nastenka here has never been to the theater." My goodness, what a joy! We got ready at once, put on our best clothes, and set off. Though grandmother was blind, she still wanted to hear the music. Besides, she was a kind old soul. What she cared for most was to amuse me. We should never have gone ourselves. What my impressions of the Barber of Seville were, I won't tell you, but all that evening our lodger looked at me so nicely, talked so nicely, that I saw at once that he had meant to test me in the morning when he proposed that I should go with him alone. Well, it was joy. I went to bed so proud, so gay, my heart beat so that I was a little feverish, and all night I was raving about the Barber of Seville. All right, my dearest fishies. We are stopping there. We are closing out stream It is time to end